So then, official good morning to everybody. Welcome to, let's see, today on the docket we have working with Samatha. So again, Samatha, we're working with the calming, cooling effect a meditation can have on the mind. Specifically, how is it that we can cultivate qualities of concentration, qualities of having the mind be able to settle on an object. Oftentimes, shamatha is something that can be cultivated when we are shamatha is something that is cultivated when we're focusing on an object. We're focusing on what are the calming, concentrating, inducing qualities of that particular object. So really, we can focus on anything in particular, and depending on what it is that we're focusing on when we're connecting with that object. So that could be breath or body sensation, what have you. Depending what are the qualities we're looking for or settling upon, that shifts the type of practice we do. So we could be observing something and then noticing, all right, the three characteristics of the dukkha, anicca, anatta. What is the stress, the impermanence, and the not self in that experience that automatically makes that relationship with the object of focus tend towards a vipassana or insight practice. If we're looking at the same object, breath, body sensation, what have you, and we're noticing the calming, concentration-inducing qualities, that becomes more of a shamatha-based object. So we're going to be focusing on shamatha today. Sorry, just lining the chat up so I can see it. Okay, yeah, good, absolutely. So to respond to the chat, no worries about internet not being great. I've absolutely been subject to that myself quite a bit here. So it's been good lately though, right? Knock on wood, we haven't been kicked off. All right, good. Okay, so let's get into some stuff here. So calling your attention to the proverbial whiteboard here, blackboard, what have you. Okay, so we're going to be focusing on rest states, or cultivating the shamatha. What I'd like to do is focus more exclusively on the body. So it's a selective activity that we're going to be working on the body and trying to notice the restful qualities, sensations of restfulness, sensations of relaxation, openness, spaciousness. All of those qualities can be inherently restful. However, it's not always immediately available, and nor should it be. So we shouldn't place that expectation on ourselves or feel that it needs to be 100% restful. Again, we're going for that solid D- here. So for most of us, there is a subtle activity going on in the mind and body at all times, unless we're in a very deep state of concentration. So even though we're going to be focusing on rest, sometimes the mind is doing its things. The images arise associated with fantasy, planning, daydream. The internal talk arises. So what I'd like to suggest is using a dismissive label of see and hear. Yeah? So that means that we're aware of thinking, and you could dismiss the activity of see or hear. So for those that are familiar with the see, hear, feel practice, we're primarily focusing on the feel space of the body. But whenever an image arises that we see, internal talk arises that we hear, just acknowledge it, but kind of in a dismissive way. Like, that's a moment of see, just kind of pushing that away, coming back into the body. Oh, that's a moment of hear, dismissing it, coming back into the body. Yeah? So in that way, just because we're aware of the activity, it just helps us keep on top of it more. So then again, we primarily anchor ourselves in the body, so returning to the feeling space of the body, and try to have just a loose, even coverage of the body, abiding in equanimity. So whatever arises, be it pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral, try to cultivate a sense of equanimity, acceptance towards it. So we can rest into the feel sensations of the body, So this is the right effort. So I mentioned the right effort a little bit yesterday as well. So the right effort is moment by moment, being aware of what arises. So there's the mindfulness quality within right effort, being one of the early Buddhist path factors, the Eightfold Path. We're aware of what's happening, and then what do we do with it? How do we respond to it? You know? If it's skillful or unskillful, it could go in particularly different directions. So just keeping that in the back of your mind. Yeah, if things are not restful in the body, what happens? Things can happen that are pleasant or unpleasant. So I'd like to focus a little bit on this. Contact this sensation and discern the presence of the three poisons. So this is a concept in early Buddhism, the three poisons. Craving, aversion, and unconsciousness. That's the way that I like to phrase them. Also, this comes more of a Shinzenian phrasing too. So craving. Let's just say I'm hanging out in the body, but there's just a bunch of stuff that's going on that's very subtly not quite restful. It's a little disruptive. It's a little angsty. Well, can I rest into that sensation, maintain contact with sensation? Is there any craving in there? Yeah? So it's a sense of unrest caused by a wanting for or an unskillful liking of a different experience. Maybe there's something happening here that's uncomfortable. I kind of want something else. I'm kind of reaching for some other experience here that might be more pleasurable, flavorable, entertaining, etc. So that wanting, that unskillful liking is creating a discontent flavor. It's creating an unrest. And the other side of that is there can be a sensation that arises that is just like, I just don't like it. Ugh, can I just get rid of this thing? And that's a quality of aversion that's being created. So it's an unrest caused by pushing away or resisting an unskillful disliking of our present experience. So these are ways that we break contact with our, or we're unable to be with our present moment experience. We either want something else, we hate what's happening, or we just check out. So the unconscious quality can arise. So we become less aware. We either drift off into thought. Thus, let's go back into the dismissive, see here, come back into the body. Or we blank out, subtly dissociate. Or we just kind of tone down our sensory clarity. Let's just numb out a little bit. So the craving, aversion, unconscious. But why would you want me to do that? Why would you want me to get in contact with that? This is supposed to be shamatha. This is supposed to be restful. This sounds inherently unrestful. Well, yes, they are inherently unrestful. They are inherently unpleasant. Howsoever, it's kind of the other side of the coin of equanimity. Equanimity, can we be open to what's happening? Can we be accepting? Can we be curious? Can we be involved in a way where we can really just ride with the subtle activity, what's happening, in a way where we're permitting, allowing, yielding to. So what prevents us, if we're not able to get into that flow of equanimity, well, some degree of craving, aversion, unconscious going on. So it's really important to know these experiences. So right now we're working on the level of the conceptual. So again, I'm kind of riffing off of the Michael Taftian map, even though the map that he puts out, he says, is clearly Vipassana oriented. But I say that there's definitely kind of a quality of release that happens. We're being aware of the craving, aversion, unconscious on the conceptual level right now. We're talking about it. But when we get into the body, can we really get into the sensory experience of it? I'm feeling this thing in the body. It's not quite restful. What's going on? I'm just not liking it. I wish this thing would go away. All right. I'm aware of the sensory experience of I'm being averse to something in my body. Okay? Now then, the more that we can induce or cultivate a sense of equanimity towards it, then that might begin to release its grasp. And then flow can potentially become more available. And the fuel or the effect that the craving, aversion has begins to diminish, and our capacity for equanimity and greater concentration, clarity, and equanimity grows until there's eventually a cessation of that event, of the of the craving, aversion, unconscious. And then, the awareness is released, so to speak. So again, I'm kind of riffing off of the Taftian model there, but not being exactly how he portrays it. So anyway, so yeah, all that is to say, we're just going to be focusing on rest states. But what happens is normally we are aware of the absence of rest. So the absence of rest can be in the form of the mental activity. Can we do the subtle, the dismissive see here label, come back into feel. And then if feel is unrestful, well, what's present? Can we discern the flavors of craving, aversion, unconscious? Yeah. And of course, the unconscious will probably be happening up here as we're kind of falling down the rabbit holes of seeing here. Okay, so having shared that, any questions or comments before we go into a sit?
I may have missed it, but when we catch ourselves, for example, floating into unconscious, did you say just bring our attention back to our body?
Yes. So if we're drifting out into unconscious, and I guess that would be kind of an expression of usually, we're falling into the content of see and hear. Yeah, then can we kind of wake up in that experience, dismissive label, see, hear, whatever the experience is, come back into feel space of the body. Yeah. Does that make it a little bit more clear? Cool. Great. Thank you for that opportunity for clarification, Kim. Anybody else? Anything else? All right. Good to go. So allow yourself to come to a comfortable upright seated position. Allow yourself to straighten up and settle in. I'm going to work with cultivating some shamatha today. So we can start off this process with simple contact with breath for a few minutes, just to settle in. So direct your attention, anchor your attention to a part of the body that is actively engaged in breath, be it the nose, throat, lungs, belly. And lean into noticing what are the calming, restful, pleasant qualities of breath. So that in breath, what are the particularly restful, pleasant qualities? The top of the in breath, the out breath, the base of the out breath. Can we try to increase our sensory clarity of this experience of breath? The more that we can lean into the present time awareness of this facet of our experience, the more it helps to slow down, diminish the mental activity of planning fantasy daydream, and helps to incline the body towards being a restful and safe container, vehicle, or abiding. Okay, good. So just know that breath is always present. As I invite you to open up your awareness into this full feeling body, just knowing that breath is not separate from this experience of the body. So allow yourself to be aware of the rest of the body. The two arms, two legs, back and front of torso, neck, face, and head. You can either apply an even coverage of your awareness over the body, of your awareness free float, however it is you like to maintain wider contact with the body. Riding off of the momentum of breath, can you detect any of the pleasant, restful qualities in the body that arise from paying attention to breath in this way? Somewhat of a splash ripple effect. The pebble is dropped into the pond, creating a localized splash. Then the impact of that splash creates a ripple that reverberates outward. And even the subtle vibratory ripplets reach the edge of the pond. Similarly, a simple contact with breath creating some pleasant, restful qualities, does that have a ripple effect throughout the rest of the body? So being aware of any aspects of feel rest. So whenever you are aware of the feel rest experience, just lean into it, just bathe it with equanimity, acceptance. Again, reminding if the thinking is occurring, that's perfectly normal. You can suggest using the dismissive labeling strategy. Whenever images arise that you see, just label see, but in a way that's dismissive. Acknowledging it's happening, then redirecting your attention back into the feel space of the body. Likewise, internal talk arises. Contact it, label it here, but in a dismissive way. We're not getting involved in any way, shape, or form. We're returning your anchoring of awareness back into the feeling space of the body. So, if you'd like to use that labeling set, whenever I'm primarily aware of feel rest, I label feel rest. But as thinking occurs, I could just use see and hear labels in a dismissive way. So it might sound something like this: feel rest, feel rest, see, feel rest, hear, feel rest, and so on like that. Use the labeling set if it's helpful. If it's not helpful, no need. And then, as we're hanging out in the body, observing restful qualities, there can be subtle or not so subtle qualities that are not restful. So allow yourself to contact any and all of those as they arise. Let's lean into the sensory clarity piece. Where are they located? The size, shape, volume of space they take up, the contours. As awareness becomes a little more refined in isolating these various active sensations, can we have equanimity towards them? Conversely, sometimes the equanimity is not necessarily available or there. Can we discern any of the three poisons there? Is there any degree of craving, wanting some other experience than what's happening now, in a way that's creating a distress or a discontent? Is there any degree of aversion or quality of not wanting, disliking, pushing away any facet of your present experience? in any degree of unconscious. That is to say, as we kind of get into it, the mind, our awareness starts to become a little foggy. The discernment, the sensory clarity starts to go. Maybe we begin to drift away from the body and start to fall into thought more. Buddha means awake. Come back into the body. Being aware of the craving, the aversion, the unconscious that may potentially arise. Just continue to look upon, bear witness, imbuing it with as much equanimity, curiosity, openness as we can. It moves us potentially from a sensory experience of the craving, aversion, unconscious, to more of a fluid. It comes and goes, rises and falls. That means it's diminishing its influence, and there can potentially be a greater capacity for equanimity. So, even though the theme is working into the rest states, there can be a lot of active. The mental activity or the various sensations within the body. That's okay. You can just lean into rest when it does arise. And how does engaging in this right effort with equanimity help to support that? Whatever arises, can we contact it clearly, cultivate the sensory clarity, hold it in our attention, cultivating concentration, viewing it with acceptance, thus cultivating equanimity. Ultimately may revert, transform any experience into a rest state eventually. Good. In the remaining time, if you like, you can drop all technique and just abide in an open awareness. In whatever way feels organically right or appropriate for you. Okay, at ease, everybody. So, post about practice, allowing yourself to still be open to receive the merits of your actions. What did you notice this morning? What was relevant for you? And of course, any questions on any of the technique or practice, feel free to unmute and manifest.
Okay. I really appreciate the discipline of the shamatha. You know, we spoke before once about the 4 quadrants of the breath in shamatha, and the discipline of the noting, the style of noting, because definitely I become really aware of how much I check out while I meditate lately, and I appreciate that keeping you still and alert. I find that it's interesting that there's a quality of suppression to it, I guess, sometimes that inevitably, I guess, is going to be part of the practice, because I noticed when we went into the last 2 minutes, my mind automatically started generating stories. And so instead of staying in a kind of open awareness, I just went back to noting, because I wanted to stay, I wanted to keep it disciplined, I guess.
Okay, good. Yeah, if we get to a point where we start to get spacey, then yeah, it's good to lean into a little bit more of a formalized, structured practice. So I think that was wise of you to go back into a labeling or a noting sequence.
And with me, as you know, as I've mentioned, I have this predilection to stay in the head. So there was a bit of effort required to stay in the body during most of the formal sit, before we opened it up, to go stay in the body and be content with staying in the body. There's some very strong predilection for distraction.
Yeah. It's
Clearly.
interesting, once we get into noticing what our habits and our patterns are, just how it goes deep into our wiring.
Mm.
So from, what I'm understanding about you, Juan, there's definitely a strong a tendency to remain in the cognitive structures, and by immersing yourself into the body, you just kind of like pop out of it a lot. So I think that the more that you can lean into getting into the nuances of the body, and as you were saying in the beginning, just working with the 4 quadrants of the breath and some of these other things that build a sensory clarity to the body, I think are definitely um, will continue to be of help and benefit to you.
It's part of the practice for me now. Yeah.
Good. I'm glad that those things are working for you, and it's all a numbers game. A consistency of effort over time, and it'll you'll have a different baseline experience. Great, thank you all.
I noticed that I do the hear way more than the see. I think I'm just not visual when it's hard for me to imagine things. So the hear is I was noticing that the hearing, thinking, think stories going in my head, reliving things, conversations. So, and then going back to my body, I like I have a lot of, because I'm on Zoom all day, I think I'm like down like this too much. And so I've got like all this pain back here. So I was very aware of that. And I'm trying to bring my laptop up higher. So I'm not like this, but
make your position a little bit more ergonomically.
Yeah. But I like the dismiss, because I usually do the Vipassana training where I'm going more into the feelings or the thought, versus kind of dismissing. So it was trying to like not, even though being aware of that there's this pain there, kind of dismissing the tendency to just get, or not the tendency, but the practice of going into it more, and rather than dismissing it and looking for relaxation in my body. It was very helpful.
Good.
And even though I kept having to kind of rest, go back and forth, the solid D-, I really like that too. I felt like I'm really getting that solid D- today. So that was helpful. Thank you.
Good. Yeah, there's all kinds of strategies. It's like, we have the pain that arises. We can either focus into it or we can focus away from it. Same thing with the thoughts. We can either kind of auger into the experience or kind of dismiss and move away from it. So we do have those options and opportunities. And I think that's part of the maturity that begins to build within us, within the practice, to really recognize, all right, what feels most appropriate? Do I feel like really kind of augering in? Do I feel kind of more like lightening up? And if it's available to kind of dismiss activity and lean towards the lightening up and restful qualities in the body, and that's working for you, and that feels like it's right for the day, then definitely go into that.
Yeah, that was very helpful today.
Did it begin to resonate into the region of the discomfort, though? Begin to soften it a bit, kind of?
Yes. Even though I wasn't, I think usually the way I try to soften it is to go into it more rather than to dismiss it. And I was trying to just make little tiny adjustments, but not big, like trying to stay still. But it's definitely better now than when I started.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sometimes by just leaning into the restful qualities, it kind of like, we begin to stockpile more equanimity in our savings account there. And so it kind of begins to just kind of retroactively, or, without necessarily direct effort, begin to resonate into some of the discomfort areas, and begins to kind of decrease the intensity, duration, frequency of some of these experiences.
Yeah.
I'm glad that worked for you today.
Yeah, thanks.
Good. Anybody else?
I guess I'll just say that I had a perfect externally environment for hearing aversion, because they're about 2 blocks away. There's some trees coming down and I saw it happening when I was walking this morning. And so it was mostly a dull roar, but anyway, I was like grinning because it was the perfect, kind of aversion experience. And it was mild through most of it. And then I also really appreciated Kim's question before. Sometimes it's those really simple things, just the reminders about going back to the body. I had a lot of, when Juan mentioned storytelling just before the end, you always imagine other people's stories are just fascinating. And of course, yours are like, what am I going to do with this work project, or have to package the banana bread, or whatever it is, So
Craving for other people's see and hear and experience. Can I ask you a couple of questions, Rochelle, about the external hearing aversion? So they're doing some tree work. They're kind of taking down limbs of trees, and so lots of buzzsaws and such like that taking place.
Yeah.
So that's kind
lots of buzzsaws and lots of that noise when they're backing up and they have to, like beep beep. In fact, I thought you might even hear it now, but it's relatively quiet now.
Okay. So what was your experience? How did you experience the aversion when that would show up?
It was a mild physical thing, like just that some of the sound kind of makes you like clench up.
Yeah.
And certainly some talk about, darn, it's not quiet, it's this constant buzzsaw. But pretty mild. I mean, nothing really bad, but just enough to kind of provide that experience of aversion.
And how did you experience the aversion? Since it kind of came in through the ears, did it become kind of this full body aversion, or how would you feel it?
There was some more full body, because the sounds kind of do resonate in you, and they're not pleasant sounds. It's not like a symphony or music that you like.
Mhm.
But like I said, relatively mild. It was just there,
Yeah.
throughout, starting as a dull roar. And then
Did your capacity for equanimity, or just kind of being able to be with it, or yield to it, allow it, permit it, did that begin to decrease the aversion? Just curious, were you able to remove the aversion to some degree?
I didn't actually think to use it that way. I do find that, like sometimes with Shinzen, he's silent during meditations for so long, and I appreciate that you have more frequent comments because it helps with the wandering.
Hmm.
So there were a few times that I used it. I don't think I used it for equanimity as a reminder so much, but certainly in terms of coming back to the breath. And I've never actually studied some of the other vocabularies like the shamatha and that kind of stuff. But the calming, I think you call it cooling, it's kind of interesting. I did have a quick question about the spelling, because I thought semantically it would be Shamata, but then I noticed at the top of the screen there was Samatha when you had up your screen share.
Hmm. So
Which
the difference is the H.
Yeah.
So I guess that's the Pali. So there would be that aspirated T, shamatha, I guess technically. So sometimes some of these words might either have a Pali or a Sanskrit spelling, in which case they're very similar, and it could be like the difference of a word or two. So normally I kind of default to the Pali.
And so that one is SAM, not SH, which it sounds like.
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, I'm not going to learn Pali, but it just seems like it would be helpful to know.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
I'm the same way. I've seen it SHA, shamatha, literally how you see it. But you spelled it SA, and I've noticed you've done that a few times. Samatha. You spell it samatha, but say it shamatha.
Yes. Yeah,
And
like a lot of people, like whenever I write it down, spell correct wants to say, you're saying the name Samantha. I'm like, no, I'm not. No, I'm not.
yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Which might be great, meditation, Samantha, but
Samantha
yeah,
chills you out.
yeah.
Okay, good. So yeah, that calming, cooling quality that can come in as external sound. There's something about sound. I mean, if there's something visual externally, we don't like it, we shut our eyes, boom, the boundary is formed. But sound, we don't have that opportunity to create a boundary. So it can be very invasive, especially if it's an unpleasant sound. So the more that we can cultivate that samatha, it brings the cooling effect. So what that does is kind of takes the bite out of the aversion to it, and it kind of leans us into the viraga, or the dispassion. So we kind of don't really have an opinion on it. It can move us more towards having a neutral experience of that, which then kind of, as the aversion goes down, the capacity for equanimity or acceptance with the experience can go up for sure. Okay, good. All right.
Mike, one quick question. So when you talk about, because obviously, I mean, I spent my whole thing just going pass, just letting it go by. Something, a thought would come up, pass, or hearing something, pass. You're saying if it's not restful, in other words, if you cannot get in that zone of that feel rest, then to go ahead and seek out some kind of, what is this, craving? Is this aversion? Is this unconscious? Right? Because if I don't, if I grab it in any way, like a thought, let's say a sound, there we go, talking about Rochelle, the sound comes in, beep, beep, beep. If I go to it to say, that's aversion, I hate that damn sound, I don't want to hear it, then I'm not resting in, then I'm not using that dismissive label. I'm actually going out to seek it, to experience it and go, why do I, in this case, why do I have aversion to it? Well, because it's a shitty sound and it's annoying.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Do you know what I mean? So you can do one of two things. And I guess that's what I wanted to clear up. You either say pass, and if it doesn't pass, do you then go out and say, why is it still bothering me, or why am I craving that thought, or why am I why is there aversion to that thought? Is that what you mean from the?
I think that's another way of putting what I was saying today. Yeah, in a way, it's just like, all right, can we kind of allow ourselves to have this kind of cooling down effect of the shamatha, just noticing the rest, almost like we're kind of throwing a blanket over
Right.
things, and then we see the kind of the blanket kind of just settle. But just if there's something there that isn't settling, well, we can do kind of like what Susan was doing of like, all right, well, I'm just going to focus on what is settled, and that might kind of retroactively settle it. Or if it's not, it can be subtly kind of radiating or emitting this dukkha or this discontent, in which case it's like, all right, well, let's take a look into it. Let's contact it a little bit. It's a little craving, a little aversion, what's going on here. And then sometimes within that, then that exploration, investigation can begin to settle it out and make the shamatha a little bit more available. So yes, overall, it was kind of like shamatha, which was a little bit more of kind of focusing on the calming, dismissing what is not. But sometimes that ain't possible.
No.
Sometimes there's something that's active and it's just radiating this kind of annoyance. In which case, yeah, there's that flexibility of, all right, can we kind of investigate it a little bit in a way to kind of reduce it?
It's kind of sad. It's kind of sad that the calming, when you're there, and then the loud always takes focus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That it can't be the reverse. It's like, here you are I'm on my sunset, sun's coming down, and then all of a sudden, a floodlight that's on automatic, just comes on, and then it's like, of course, attention goes to the loudest, the brightest.
The loudest, the brightest, and also the novelty, what's new on the scene.
Right. Right.
That we can kind of,
right.
Sometimes kind of focus on the subtle, and appreciate the subtle, which then might make that kind of floodlight kind of less of an annoyance, so to speak, and maybe just also looking at kind of the aversion to that floodlight,
Yeah.
I definitely have one of those right on my property. As soon as the sun goes down, it's right in my face. When they put that up, I had so much aversion towards it, but now it's just been kind of working with it to like, okay, it is. And there's still the subtlety around to appreciate. Okay.
Thank you.
So homework, can we, as we go through the day, allow ourselves to cultivate this kind of balance, this wakeful, energetic, restful quality as we engage in what we're doing today? And if we can't, well, what's going on there? Is there some sort of subtle craving, aversion, unconscious? Can we just kind of tap into that, have a little bit more of an increased sensory clarity, equanimity, concentration with that, and then kind of come back into this calm abiding as we go through the day. All right. That is the homework. Good luck. I hope to see everybody tomorrow. Thank you, everybody. Take care.
Hey, listen, I want to know how Juan is just traveling the world while everybody else is in there. I mean, he's gone to New York. He's now in Japan? Where are you now? You're supposed to stay at home, dude. You're not supposed to be traveling. What's up with that?
Just, I guess, a hang up I have, is about my space. I'm one of those people that's organized, but I'm not like always the best duster and things like that. And I get a little embarrassed about that, so I use the backgrounds. This one is a home in Japan.
I love it. It's beautiful. It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Around the world with one. See you guys. Thank you.
Have a good day, guys.
Bye.
Bye-bye.